Welcome to Forbidden Planet 42, celebrating 42 years of the Forbidden Planet store in London and 42 years of trying to answer the ultimate question to life, the universe, and everything. On today's session, we've got with us the mighty Laura Dodd, Forbidden Planet's book buyer, and the spectacularly talented Ben Aaronovitch. How are you doing, mate? It's great to see you.
I'm doing very well, thank you. I never know where to look when we're doing these things. I always look at the person and then I wonder why I can't catch their eye. I find it really distracting about Zoom meetings. You can't catch people's eyes. And I'm just beginning to really appreciate meeting people in person now. It's like...
I could not agree more. It's highly discomforting and your eye line goes all over the place during one of these things. Yeah. No, it's
I'm going to put you on face. It's easier if I put you on face.
Excellent. So Ben, when was your first experience with Forbidden Planet? When did you first become aware of it?
I was trying to remember that. I actually cannot remember my first experience with Forbidden Planet. When I go back in my memory, Forbidden Planet was just there, you know, like Dominion Theatre and like that in that bit of the West End. There was Games Workshop, there was the Dominion Theatre where you went to see Star Wars, and there was Forbidden Planet. And that's you know, I can't actually remember ever thinking, oh, look, there's a place called Forbidden Planet. I just remember, you know, Forbidden Planet. And back in those days, Forbidden Planet was the internet, you see, because you know, now, if I want to know if a book is out, I go on the internet, go, is this book out yet? But in those days, you used to go downstairs and look at the new arrivals bay, which was just at the bottom, where it is now, but in a different place, you know. Walk down and see the oh, that's that kind of stuff. So that's when I, you know, it was part of my, you know, routine. You go down to West End, you go Games Workshop, you go Forbidden Planet, you know, then you go home on a 134. I
think that is I think that's an answer that our owner Nick Lander would actually love. You know, I kind of analogize Forbidden Planet to say Stonehenge or the Easter Island statues or something that's just there. It's essentially been there through the ages.
Well, I tried to remember, but I don't actually remember. I do not remember the moment where I went, oh, look, there's a place called Forbidden Planet. It just feels like it's like Camden Lock. It's like a lot of, you know, which I remember when it was a collection of stalls and not this huge sprawling thing that it is now. But it was always there. I can't remember when it wasn't a Camden Lock. You know, and it's the same thing. I can't remember when there wasn't a Forbidden Planet. So...
I mean, I think that's a beautiful answer, particularly from somebody like yourself whose writing has often been so London-centric. I think that's a great way to look at it. Can you remember any of your signings? Oh, sorry, mate, carry on.
What, my signings? My signings personally? Yeah. Where I was a signee?
Yes, exactly.
Yes, I can remember my first ever where no one came. And someone had to push past me to get to the Gallant's Masterworks section because they wanted something off the Gallant's Masterworks section. I remember that. I mean, I don't get huge crowds. I mean, you always kind of get put into the humble position when you like walk past, like the Ian M. Banks or someone was signing, and the queue went out the door, round the back, down the side. You know, and you thought, oh, well, that puts me in perspective. You know, I get like 60 people. I think, yeah, 60 people. Fucking hell, brilliant. You know, and then you get Brandon Sanderson, who literally has a queue that snakes all the way to the, you know, basically people go and see The Cursed Child, you know, as part of the queue.
That's brilliant. Hey, Laura, I know you've got a whole bunch of questions for Ben. Do you want to get into some of them?
Yeah, no, definitely. So The Fae and the Furious, your next graphic novel, is due out in November. What can you tell us about this? Yay!
Well, it's been out as a single. It's been out as the 4 issues have been out as a single. It's you know, it was James Swallow's fault, right? Basically, he said, "Oh, you should do like a Fae and the Furious, the Fast and the Furious kind of thing," because you know, Peter acquires a Ferrari at the end of a particular book, which I'm not going to spoil, right? And so, what the hell do we do with this Ferrari? And I thought, well, yeah, obviously we're going to have to do. He said, you're going to have to do a Fast and the Furious. And he said, you got it the Fae and the Furious, which is why I had to give him a credit in the thing. I came up with the idea. And basically, so illegal street racing with Peter and the Fae, basically. I don't want to spoil too much about it, but that was a lot of fun. You know, comics are very good at kind of action scenes. So you when you're doing the comics, you tend to look for something that will be actiony rather than something that will be people sitting around in a room, because every medium has its kind of strengths, and the strengths of comics is fast, dynamic, and also you can do some fun sort of contrast. You can do ironic counterpoints with comics that you can't do in books and films and stuff. And so therefore I like doing ironic compounds. I like having shock panels. I like splash panels and things like that. So this was like, yay, cars, racing, you know, the Fae, it'll be cool. And it was a lot of fun.
It does sound super cool, actually. How does your like, how does it differ when you're writing your novels to writing the graphic novels? Like, do you need more time to do one or the other, or do you find it easier to do like a more visual medium? Or
the novels are more time consuming because basically because writing graphic novels is the easiest writing on a kind of line by line basis you can possibly do, because only one person actually reads the script, right? That's the artist, and then he does all the work, right? so in a novel, I have Peter walk into a room, I have to think about the room, I have to describe the room, I have to say what Peter's doing in the room, I have to convey the mood, the sense, the drama, you know. But when I Peter walking into a room in a comic, I go, it's the inside of a council flat, it's grungy, there's stuff hanging off the walls. I don't have to worry about the description, I don't have to worry about Oxford commas or whether the and goes, you know, how many, the list goes off half a page, because nobody is going to see that except for the artist, right? And then he's going to have to convey the mood through his work. And, you know, I have, since started working on comics, I have become so respectful of artists, because just getting a likeness, right, to match up from panel to panel to panel to panel, and then to do one of those in a month, to do like 22 pages in a month where the likenesses all match up, right? And all the likenesses, not just your main characters that you've got like lots of reference photographs for, but like minor characters in the background you have to match up from panel to panel to panel to panel. I couldn't do that in a million years. I couldn't even start to do that. So I find that very, very impressive, and so therefore I exploit them mercilessly, because they give me, I get very good, you know, give me very good artists, and I exploit them mercilessly by saying things like, well, something actually happens here, just go, you know, like, he punches in, your choices to the angles on that one, I'm not bothered. And then sometimes, like, you know, I veer between the kind of what I call the Walter Hill sparseness. Have you ever read a Walter Hill script? Especially one for 8 years.
Absolutely, yeah.
As, you know, where he describes the Nostromo like in terms of like oily corridor. That's it. That's the whole engineering deck of the Nostromo. 2 words. Right? Because he knew Scott was a designer, so there was no point in him making long descriptions of what the corridor looked like, because Scott was going to come in and impose his vision on the thing. And so sometimes I get very Alan Moore, where like I have like 6 panels, it's like vertically integrated. They go 1, 2, 3, like in this order. This happens in this one. This happens in this one. There's, you know, on the shelf you can see a little plastic man giggling going up and down. And then sometimes I'm like, well, the car overtakes. I'm not really that bothered. It's in this. Like, I send them like the location on Google Maps and say the car goes down this road. Whatever looks good, you know. I can't tell you which one is more fun. Like, both of those are enormous fun to do, you see, and I like doing both of those. So
you've just mentioned something that I hadn't really thought of. It's what a fantastic tool today's kind of GPS technology is for authors. You know, when you're writing, for visualizing a place, and particularly when you're working with, you know, artists who are not residents in the UK, maybe have never been to London, the amount of visual reference you can send them now is amazing.
Oh yeah, no, I send usually a huge packet by what's it called, WhatsApp or WhatsApp or whatever the fuck it's called, of graphic. So you can tell I was born in '64. Really, like, I've got to that stage where I no longer really cope. I'm granddad, you know, a subwoofer granddad, and you want a stereo granddad. But Google Maps as well. Google Street View is very, very useful because it's actually a time machine as well. Because like my book actually set about 23 years in the past, you see, and like quite London changes so quickly sometimes. So it's very useful to say, no, you use the 2017 setting because that building isn't there anymore. The building we set the draft, and I now use that. I look for places that are no longer used so that I can do my horrible kind of like thing, and no one can say to me, "Oh no, that's actually a delicatessen." No, when I made it, it was something else completely different. It's delicatessen now, but back then, it was a safe house for a warehouse for people selling stolen goods.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That is really lovely. I do love the sheer amount of, like I said, London-centric detail that you have, because I remember back in the day when say you used to have American-produced British comics. Marvel's Captain Britain in the mid-70s is the best example I can think of, which was something I actually liked. But when you opened up the pages, like Herb Trimpe's art, who's a famous Hulk artist, it was like all the policemen were in Victorian policemen's costumes, right? You know what I mean? And all the references were just completely off.
No, but
it's baffling to look at.
There's no excuse for it. There was a Buffy cartoon, which set in I think in a Scottish school, and I put this on the internet because it took me literally 2 seconds, right, to find not just a British ambulance, but a British ambulance from the area in which that ambulance would have been in the comic, right? It took me 2 seconds to find the inside of a British school gym, which do not have Union Jacks hanging. Someone stabbed with a Union Jack on a pole. I said, we don't have Union Jacks hanging from our gyms, right? It's just not, not something that happens. And like the cars were on the wrong side. They had the police cars had shields on them. I mean, all of this takes like 3 seconds to Google. Literally British police car, no problem. And I just sat there and you still get it because people will use the wrong tape color. Right, so they always use yellow and black, and actually it's blue and white instead when it's yellow and black. And I still haven't worked out why sometimes it's yellow and black. I think what happens is they run out of blue and white tape. The yellow and black tape is basically used for hazard, right? So the fire brigade used it, right? Yeah. But crime scene tape is usually blue and white, and it gets more complicated because, like when I did in The Fair and the Furious, we have a sequence in Holland, and I had to look up Dutch. And they're like the Germans, they use red and white, right, for their crime scene tape, but it has a little, because they don't want to be mistaken for Germans, it has a little German, little Dutch crest, a Netherlands crest, in between like stripe, 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 Netherlands crest, stripe, 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 just so you make sure it's Dutch, it's Holland, it's the Netherlands tape, Van der Valk tape, it's not. So as a result, I was watching Van der Valk making sure I had the right tape. Ooh, right
fun.
tape there on that.
I love it. And speaking of comic book visuals, given your grounding like television, audio, drama, novels, were you much before you got involved working with Titan on comics? Were you much of a comics fan? Was there anything you used to read back in the day?
I was an occasional comics book fan. I wasn't like I've become very wary. I once referenced myself as a Doctor Who fan, right, back in 1986, and I've been dragging that around ever since because of my fundamental misunderstanding of what the word fan actually meant. You see? Because to me, a fan was someone who made sure they were in at Friday or Saturday to watch Doctor Who every week, like regularly. I didn't know it was someone who wrote fan fiction or subscribed to a magazine or went to conventions. And then I only found out that definition of what a fan is when I became the object of devotion, if you like. And I suddenly found myself, I've never been like a fan. If you ever describe me as a fan, I would be a Terry Pratchett fan. If I was an actual fan. But before I got a chance to be a proper fan, I was on the other side. And once you're kind of on the other side of the tape, so to speak, your perspective is completely different. And so you never really can enjoy conventions in quite the same way that you can enjoy them when you're just like. So I tried very hard to go to a Terry Pratchett convention, but they were booked. I learned the hard way that unless you book them like 2 seconds after they're open, like all the places they're just gone. And so I had to do that thing where you phone up and go, "Hello, my name's Ben Aaronovitch. I wonder if I can come to your convention." And that was great. But then I ended up partially sort of straddling the tape on that one, and that was kind of slightly weird. But it was a lot of fun. I mean, I'm glad I took my son and it was like releasing an animal that had been raised in captivity, releasing him into the wild. It's like, fly, my pretty girl. This is your natural habitat. Just scamper off. I didn't see him for 3 days. He just scampered off. And that was it. 3 days. It was brilliant.
Well, my adult son works for us at San Diego, and I don't see him either. So I don't know what he's up to. But these things are a brilliant, just a brilliant wealth of experience at conventions, I think, and great thing for young people to go to, and great thing amazing experience.
Once you're in your late 50s, I did Dublin, and I was like, I'm just wearing myself out now. I'm exhausted. Like, I can't eat another lunch. Because, especially Worldcon, where you go to Worldcon if you're an author, because all your bloody publishers from all over the world are there, and they all want to have lunch with you and talk to you about it. So I didn't want to go to Worldcon because it's not that I don't like it, but it's because I'm just tired. I wanted to finish my book. No, you must go to Worldcon because Betsy will be there, and we have to go and see her. And it was fun though, and I went to a lot of interesting panels once I was there.
Yeah,
but it was nice because I wasn't on any.
That's what I was going to ask you. You attending rather than actually
that was kind of fun. So it meant just for once, because like the law of going as a special guest or something to a convention is the panels you want to go and see are always at the same time as the panels you're on.
Yeah,
and so therefore you always miss the panels you want to go and see. So it's just like, urban fantasy in kind of like ethnic diversity in urban fantasy. That's the one for me. And I went and it was great. I just sat in the back taking notes. Because I've got no shame and will steal from anyone. I really.
Here. I think that's a fantastic philosophy. Laura,
I learned that on Doctor Who. You see, with Doctor Who writers still, we're totally shameless.
Brilliant. I love that. And with Doctor Who, of course, you can do it, because the nature of the universe.
Well, it's the Doctor Who's version of the culture. Doctor Who's version of cyberpunk. That's the two most famous of my cases. But, Frankenstein's monster, the Doctor Who version of The Christmas Carol, the Doctor Who version. You can shamelessly steal cultures and genres from anyone else and go, oh, well, we're doing a horror movie because why not? We can do a horror movie. We haven't done one for at least 3 seasons. Let's do a horror movie.
I love it.
So you must be quite excited about the TLV stuff later this year, Time Lord Victorious for Doctor Who. Are you going to be reading the comics? Are you?
I don't know. I'm working. I've got my head down.
You actually had the look of somebody who actually didn't know what that actually was then when Laura brought it. I was in a meeting the other week and people started talking about that and I was like, what? Hey? So you might not have heard about it. It's a big kind of cross-media initiative for a new Doctor Who narrative that's not born out of television, but it's born out of everything else. So, kind of audio and online and whatnot.
My status with Doctor Who is very strange, right? Because it's sort of like I feel like I don't know, like a veteran from World War One. It's like, do you ever seen a film called The Life and Times of Colonel Blimp?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
I'm basically Colonel Blimp, right? So all these young whippersnappers who do everything differently keep running past me and going, no, Doctor Who, do this. And I'm like, no. That's not the way wars are fought. In my day we had £2.50 and we were thankful, and so therefore my relationship with Doctor Who is like one of continuous amusement now. I just go, yeah, it's great. I mean, I watch it and I'm like, yay. Don't know what's going on really. And so so it's not so much I've become attached from Doctor Who fandom as Doctor Who's fandom kind of gently drifted away while I wasn't looking, and so and because I wasn't an active fan to start with, so I miss these things like announcements like that unless it turns up on IO9 or something. I don't notice it, and then I read it because it's like, oh look, an English thing on IO9.
I think the other thing is as well, because we're sitting here within Forbidden Planet, a lot of the press on Time Lord Victorious hasn't even started yet. But internally, because we talk about it a lot, sometimes you get out of whack with what everybody is thinking about.
Well, it's like I am working on a graphic novel that will come out next year. flimsies will come out this year, but the will start coming out this year. But the graphic novel will come out next year. So in my head, like Fate and the Furious was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Right, Fate and the Furious was production-wise. Fate and the Furious was 2 years ago. I'm thinking about Monday, which is the next graphic novel. And I'm sitting there, so my brain's all totally devoted. Like, so you're asking me about the Fate and the Furious, I'm having to kind of warp my brain back. But you get that. It's the same with novels. By the time you're selling one novel, you're usually about halfway through the next one.
Yeah.
So you're not thinking about the novel. Everyone's going, well, where did you get the idea for this? And you're going, I don't remember. That was 2.5 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same principle with filmmakers, right, Ben? You do interviews with them when they're releasing a movie, and frequently, maybe not so much the director and the writer, but the actors have often filmed their stuff 2.5, 3 years before.
Yes,
and they often struggle to bring it to mind, because they've done 3 of the movies since then.
You really should just interview the editors, because they're the ones who've just finished with it.
Yeah, absolutely right. Sadly, they're frequently the least verbal people in the process. That's a problem. You get a bunch of dudes who are spectacularly talented but sit in a back room editing for 6 months at a time, and they're not always used to expressing those visual ideas they have. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. But, I mean, if you wanted to go and talk to people, you wouldn't have become an editor.
That's right. It's so true.
If I wanted to stand up on stage and talk to people, I wouldn't have become a writer, which is a job where you spend 92% of your life in front of a screen in your own house, if you're lucky.
Yeah.
So what can you tell us about the Glance and Rivers of London, the BAME award that you guys
we're thinking of renaming it, because we all hate the weird name of the BAME thing. So we're trying to find something which says the same thing but doesn't sound like it's come out of a sociology class.
It always sounds like a Batman villain to me.
It does. BAME. Oh no, BAME. BAME. I mean, how do you pronounce it? BAME, BAME, bomb, beam. It's ugly and it's a kind of insulting actually in some ways. So we're trying to find something a bit in marketing terms sexier than BAME. Basically, my idea is that I don't know if you've noticed, but publishing tends to be a teeny weeny bit totally white, right? And not just totally white, but particularly white in a particularly kind of provincially white middle class public school way.
Yes.
Right. And science fiction for the if you think about it, for the genre of the future, right, is incredibly conservative in that way. And I thought, well, they're obviously out there, but we probably don't bother trying. A lot of you need 2 things to write. You need time, and that's actually equals money. Time equals money, and you need the idea that actually someone might actually look at it at some point. So I thought I'll do an award that mainly concentrates on the first thing, but also has elements of the third thing. So I thought I'll just offer some money, because then it will be an incentive. Then you do 3 months slogging away over work. There's the possibility you might get some cash for it, and then the cash will allow you, give you a bit of breathing space to do. Because this is my own experience as a writer. You need cash in order to kind of like buy time to write. Otherwise, all the writers will end up being people who are born like with a trust fund, because no one else has time to do any writing. So I wanted to encourage young writers from the BAME community. I freaking hate that word. And I would have liked to have done a wider push, right? I would have liked to have done crime as well. But my juice you have the juice that you have. You have the power that you have. And my power mainly is confined to sort of like the realm of science fiction at the moment. And so therefore, I can bully Goliaths. That part of Orion that's involved in Goliath, I can bully them into doing what I want if I sort of like stump my foot and pout enough, which I was willing to do. Where I can't bully kind of like other things, and my idea is I hope that this will be a starting point. So this will become a rolling program. We'll get better at it, and as an organisation, we'll get more slick, and the awards ceremony will pick up more publicity, and the kind of like so. It's basically so we got a ton of entries, which then we got loads of judges to look at. I'm waiting for the short list, and then I'm going to read them. But no, I don't have any input in who wins, by the way. Yeah. Mainly because I'm out of touch with science fiction. Right, I've become like a Colonel Blimp. I like my rockets to go up and be pointed. No, that's what I want. I don't mind a bit of diversity, but I like ray guns. Ray guns is what I want. And like, a lot of modern science fiction is all kind of exploring concepts of identity and biology, and I'm like, oh, biology, yuck, don't want to do biology. I don't want to know post-human. But if I read them, everything would look like, Lewis McMaster Bujold had written it. That would be like key to my heart, or C.J. Cherry or somebody like that, right?
Yeah.
It's like, one of the and like all the actual cutting-edge modern writers, up-and-coming writers, I don't like your stuff. It's full of stuff that I don't like. So I had to make sure that people who were actually into that kind of stuff were actually reading the short stories, rather than me. And also, I'm incredibly lazy. So, but I will read them once we have a short list. Before I meet the authors, because you've always got to read at least part of someone's book before you meet them, because they'll ask you that question. You have to be able to answer that. It'll tell in detail that showed you actually read the book, didn't just check the Wikipedia page before you interviewed them or something. So
yeah. God, definitely. We've all been caught out sometimes, haven't we? Because
but you've got an excuse because you must actually have to handle thousands of bloody authors.
I mean, there are thousands, but I was just thinking when I was a bookseller and you'd be like, oh yeah, you should read that. they'd come back saying, what did you think of? I'll get around to reading it at some point.
Well, no, it's just, whoa.
I do think it's a fantastic initiative that you've done, and just I think to see somebody with your success and your position and influence actually doing something like this is very inspiring, I think, mate.
Well, there's no point. My thing is, it's like money. There's no point having it if you don't use it. There's no point having power if you don't use it. And what happens is as you become a writer, suddenly people start asking you. You suddenly get the growing realization that you actually have some influence. Like, you didn't have any influence because like no one listens to you when you're like a starting author, wants to know your opinion on anything, right? Let alone writing, okay? And then you get to a point, suddenly people start sending you because they want you to blurb their books. They want you to blurb books. They want you to talk. They want you to go on panels. And you sit there and you go, oh my God, I've actually got some power. And then if you don't focus it, you just tend to go with like that. So you start like blurbing the books because people sent them to you. So you're just blurbing random books, right? that people So I thought, I can't do this because A, I'm really crap at reading people's books because like they send them to me and I kind of like, So either I'm just making up blurbs out of the top of my head. It's brilliant! Exclamation mark. A stunning read. Right? Or you just have to disappoint a lot of people when they sit there. And I know from experience, you sit there going, fucking blurb my book. When I'm, dishing out Oscars or something, he's not going to get, you can store in that trouble for the future. So I thought, right, let's focus, let's find, and I thought, well, I tell you what I will do is I will go and find authors that normally have trouble getting blurbs. And then one thing led to another, and that ended up leading to the BAME Awards, because I thought, well, let's actually just regularize this, because actually I'm not going to like half their books because I don't like that kind of science fiction anymore, because I've become, as I pointed out, Colonel Blimp. And so therefore, but they're still, there's a difference. One of the things you learn as you get older is that just because you don't like something doesn't mean it's not good.
Yeah,
it's perfectly possible not to like something and it to be really, really good, but you just, like opera, right? I have tried to like opera and ballet and various other high art forms, right? Every so often I take a sort of run up. Yeah, I'm going to go and see it, like a really good, they say, this is a brilliant performance of such and such. You must go and see it. And I'm always sitting in the auditorium going, oh, God. And I just think, you uncultured swine. And then, you can I even pretend that you're really enjoying it? Like, tears and fucking on my face. Yeah. It was the most brilliant thing, and then just have to agonizingly sit through another 5 hours of someone singing. Right? And, so I think, right, just find the things that you like and do that, but do not make the mistake of just because you don't like it, it's not any good, right? So, you know, you just don't like it. And I've realized that like this whole sway, it's like music, you know, this whole sways of music I don't like. Okay, because you know my musical taste stops in about 1995, with a few exceptions. Like it's like, no, I don't listen to anything after 1995 now. You know, but I know there's lots of good stuff. It's just not my stuff. And so the same is true of books. I don't necessarily like this new stuff, but I think it's good. I read some of it and I think this is really good. It's just I wish I liked the characters more. Or I'm not really interested in this kind of exploration of transhumanism or whatever it is that they've got, you know, bee in their bonnet. Because good authors always have a bee in their bonnet about something, you know, and if it's not something you've got a bee in your bonnet about, you're like, oh. No, I want mighty starships clashing overhead and ray guns and aliens and things I can, you know, things of my child, comfort food from my childhood. That's what I want. So, I want to see the next generation succeed. I don't necessarily want to read their books.
I think that's such a fantastic way to look at it. Can we loop around back to something you touched upon before, which we wanted to ask you about, which is what you're working on at the moment?
Well, I've just finished a short story for the Czechs, who asked me to write a short story for a collection for. There's going to be I think it's the 80th. Oh my God, no, it's the 100th anniversary of RUR of Capek's play. So they're doing a thing, and my publisher asked me if I wanted to do a short story, which I did. So I've basically done Nightingale in Prague in 1939. So you know, because I had to tie it into Rivers of London, because otherwise my agent would kill me. So there can be no deviation from things that make money. Okay. So I've just finished that. So that was actually, for a short story, that was a lot of work, because of course there was all this historical research. As people who follow me on Twitter will know, every so often random questions will arrive, like, can you see this city from this, you know, this town? What were cars like in Prague in 1930? That's why, right? That's why. You sit outside cafes in Weimar in 1927. I don't know. I looked for photographs, but you see, it's much easier for someone in Germany to know the answer to that than it is for me to know the answer.
Of course.
To that. Because not only am I not speaking German, but I don't have access to German sources. Whereas people in Germany, they can go, oh, I went down my local library and had photographs of people sitting outside, you know, and the same with Czech, and the same with everything. You can always find people. So once you quite popular, you can find people who know, and then they will just tell you for free. It's brilliant. So you just go on Twitter, does anyone know? And like, you get thousands of freaking answers. And then I started whole arguments about things, like Latin translations and things on my thread, because I asked for a quick Latin translation, and 8 people have then disagreed about the exact, which always happens with Latin. 8 people have disagreed about actually how you would actually translate that into Latin. And I just let them get on with it. Whoever emerges, it's like the Thunderdome, you know, like 5 Latin experts into 1 Latin expert leads. You know, whoever leads upright, I go with them.
Brilliant. And what else have you got on your plate at the moment?
Well, like I said, I'm doing issue 2 of Monday. Then I'm doing issue 3 and then issue 4. I'm going to see if I can get issue the Monday finished, because then they've got it. They like to have it production ahead of schedule.
They do indeed.
What else? So I'm going to do that, and then we get to the problem of COVID, right? So I have 2 major projects that follow on from that. Now, I would normally be getting on with the next novel, but at the moment, I can't go and do my usual research. I can't go to the places and poke around in them, and a lot of places are closed, so I can't do a lot of poking for them. So I'm starting prep on the next novel, whose name I'm not allowed to say, because apparently now releasing the title has become a thing.
Yeah,
I remember when no one cared. Right, what the bloody book was called. I couldn't make people interested in what the bloody next book was called. If I went now, my agent's like, no, you can't tell people. Publicity people go out and say, no, we want to release a controlled release of information. I'm going, just the bloody title.
You're in that world now. It's like the title of the next Avengers movie. Yeah,
see, they don't tell you when you step over into that world. It's not like they give you a FAQ, you know, and a booklet and a website to look up, you know. So you've became a famous author. I should bloody do that, you know. Like, you've become a famous author. Look out for this. These things will start happening to you. Do not be alarmed. This is a natural process of becoming famous. You know, and you're like, oh God. And then, but also I have another novella. Now, this is the Reynolds novella, which doesn't have a title yet, so that I can't give away a title for that one. It's set in remote part of Wisconsin. And I had no bloody intention of going there for research because we're set in a remote part of Wisconsin in winter time. And I had no chance. There was no way. I mean, apart from anything else, you can't get there unless you can drive. So you go on Google Maps and you go, public transport links to this place. It goes, there are no public transport. It's like the whole of America is like this. Not even a Greyhound bus goes there. You cannot get there without driving, and I can't drive. So I had no intention. So I may have to write that one first because I don't need to go anywhere to write it. And a lot of the research has already been done, and a lot of the research involves me talking to people who live there already and stuff. So
yeah.
You know, so I might have to do that one first. I don't want to necessarily go out of order because I'd like to get started because the long books take such a long time to write. The sooner you get, the sooner it's started, the sooner it's finished, kind of way, and also, I'm aware of deadlines. I'm contractually obligated to hand in the buddy books last year, I think, of 2 of them. And so therefore, one doesn't like to get more than 5 years ahead out of schedule. I don't, anyway. I start to feel bad after 2 years, I have to say. I'm kind of fine. I'm kind of very Douglas Adams after 1 year, but 2 years I begin to turn into kind of a bit of a nervous wreck. It starts to prey on me, and I get a twitch, and I can't sleep and stuff, and so therefore I like to get it. You go, why am I so slow? Well, perhaps you should stop playing Civilization 6 for a bit. But I can't live without my Civilization 6.
Well, now, we're talking about the longer form novels. Laura and I were talking earlier on about about Rivers of London, actually. And you had a question about this, didn't you, Laura? I seem to recall.
Yeah, I was wondering whether you had it all planned out, like there's an ending already in your head and you're just kind of getting there, or whether it's more kind of organic than that.
No, it's much more. You see, when I started this, I was thinking much more in terms of police procedural books. So it's much more like Morse or Ruth Rendell or what's his name, Ian Rankin. Then I wasn't thinking like in terms of like Game of Thrones. So I like there wasn't a there isn't a bit where like they all come charging over Hadrian's Wall and try to exterminate us. It's like there's no, I don't have a kind of, it's not moving up to a confrontation. It's not that. So in some ways, the fantasy elements of my books are not subordinate exactly, but they're in terms of genre. The police procedure is the dominant form, of which the fantasy elements then kind of creep in and do their mischief. If you like, in terms of how the books are structured. So the books are generally structured as there have been some ongoing elements, and I think in some ways that was just that go out of hand. I created the faceless man, bad guy, he's got no face, right? And then he just got out of hand, and then he then not to put too many spoilers on it, had to go. But they're really kind of like more like police detective books. So you have a police detective, and every book is a case, and gets on with the case. I've tried to keep the serial elements down as much as possible, although that's almost impossible now because there's so many ongoing characters with like little tangled soap opera lives, and they all sit there going, "I want part in this book." Shut up! I want to be in this book.
I thought it's always struck me that's really the inspired, for me, is the inspired element of what you've done is jamming those two things together. Because if you look at, say, a series like Ed McBain's 87th Precinct, there's 30 years of it, there's 40 plus novels, and the police procedurals, but this ongoing backstory that grows and expands. And it's a whole career and a whole universe you can spend your whole life playing with.
The Ed McBain was really funny though, because they span 30 years, and the police procedure actually changes, right? Yeah. But the characters only age about 5 years.
Correct. So, that is true.
Steve Carell's career lasts from about 1958 to about 1997.
No, it's true. Yeah,
But he's still. I think he becomes detective first class at some point.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like,
yes,
he only ages about 5 years. And it's. And that was a deliberate thing. I mean, that was something that a lot of writers did in the 50s, 60s, where you wrote a lot of fiction where you would expect to write 20 to 30 books because you were paid like 3 cents on a thing. There wasn't longevity. Books did not come back. In nowadays, you expect your book of back catalogue to be available forever and ever and ever. And one of the two things about crime and science fiction compared to, say, Littific, or other commercial fiction, is the way in which science fiction and to a lesser extent crime, they have legs. Right, so a science fiction book will come out and it will not earn massively in the beginning, right? But it will carry on earning steadily it's got like a long tail compared to, basically your bookshop is based on this principle that you can scram a bookshop full of like books that were written 30 years ago and people will still come in and buy them. Oh, look, that's got a cover, I'll buy that. That looks vaguely like a book I liked, which is my buying technique, by the way. Oh, that looks like a book I quite like. It's got a spaceship on it, I'll buy that. And always adjacent to an author you quite like. I did a whole analysis when I was working at Waterstones of how science fiction readers buy books, and my conclusion was that they zero in on a book or author they like, and then they kind of spiral out from that author. And what you want to do is you want to find an author who's writing stuff a bit like the stuff that you like that you're writing. You want to change your name so that you're within that initial opening spiral. And then you want to make sure your covers are a bit like the cover of the book. And that's like my marketing tip. It doesn't work elsewhere in the bookshop, but in science fiction shelves, or in Forbidden Planet, the whole of Forbidden Planet. That actually works really well. That works.
I think that is an inspired approach. To flip back to police procedurals for a second, because I imagine with a lot of conversations in your work, people are going into it from the fantasy angle when you're being interviewed and whatnot. But talking about the 87th precinct, what are the police procedurals have been favourites of yours? What are the ones are you aware of that?
Well, I mean, the 87th precinct was like if you want to talk about a massive thing. 87th precinct was like a massive influence. I mean, partly because the 87th precinct actually takes place in a secondary world. In a secondary world creation, that city does not exist. He just made up that city.
Yeah.
Right? And he made up the police station, and he made up the police force, and he made up the politics of that city.
Yeah.
It's loosely based on New York, but it isn't New York. It's got its own districts. It's got, and this, after a while, you're reading it, and he goes into this long history of the Diamondback district, and why it's called Diamondback, and the Dutch family, which had like a name like Dumenboch, which is why it's called Diamondback now, and now it's become a cruel kind of irony because it's a slum, right? It's a ghetto and a slum, and I just sat there going, wow, I love that kind of stuff. So 86 precinct stroked my police procedural and my Tolkien kind of receptors at the same time. So it's like, yay!
I think that's so right. I mean, McBain is a world builder, and I see so few people discuss that. Actually, I think you're really on.
Well, he wrote a really interesting essay on it and about why he did this and everything. And the thing I really like about that is that I want a map. I mean, I would like a map of the city in the 87th precinct. Just as I like that map of Gotham that you can get now, the Gotham City map. Oh, that's where everything is, And just as I open a fantasy book, I want a map at the front. I don't care about these people going, oh no, I find it gets in the way. Fuck off! If you haven't got a map at the beginning of your book, I don't think you're taking me seriously.
Yeah,
right. I'll forgive Terry Pratchett lack of map, right?
Yeah.
But I will. Everybody else, I expect to have a map. If you're not funny, I want map.
I think you are absolutely right. I think the power of the literary map is it's a very, very powerful thing. I think that's
I want a map. People keep asking for maps. I go, it's London, it's 30 miles across. Any map that I do that's in detail enough for you to see where Peter, trace Peter's roots, right, would cover like 8 pages. It's like it's not feasible. But they keep asking, but go on Google Earth. It's like, it's all there. Except for the bits I make up.
Just put a link in your introduction.
Well, I've done maps. I mean, the thing is, like, you have an active fandom, you have a passive fandom, you have a readership, and it's very important you not to get these mixed up. Right, so my active fandom tends to come from fantasy readers, tends to be drawn from the fact, because that's, most of these people like active fandom, and they're looking for stuff, and they find stuff, and they do it, and they're active. I've got a very small, they call themselves teeny fandom for a reason. And then I have a sort of a fandom, as in people who are waiting for my book to come out and rush out and buy it, like I did with a lot of books when I was, you know, which I call kind of passive fandom, which is like people who like your books and they want to read them, but they're not going to write fan fiction about them. They're not gonna form groups and talk about it. They just, you know, they just read your books. It's a solitary kind of fandom. And then you have the readership, which is like 90 times larger than either of those groups, right? Who are those people, and nobody freaking knows what they're thinking from day to day because they don't talk about it. Right? And the readership is the one that drives publishers mad. Especially, you talk about, like, oh, you blended these two genres together. I'm regarded as being this genius for taking these two genres and creating a successful cross. As if I did it on purpose. As if I went, I shall join two mediums to get two genres together and I all shall be rich. I just didn't want to write a straight crime book, or I couldn't make up my mind, science fiction or crime. So I wrote one that was, you know, fell into both genres, and some people liked it. That's what happened, right? Yeah. It wasn't like a carefully brought out thing where I challenged the conventions of the genre. I just lucked into it by accident. The role of luck in successful writing career is grossly you know, it all looks inevitable once you're one side and impossible when you're the other side. And people say, how do you get into writing? I don't know. It just happened. You know, you can do all the things they tell you to do. You can write the book, you can put the letter, you can do a perfect letter and all those sorts of things, and your book can be of a certain quality, and you can still fail utterly. I should know. I did like 20 years of failing utterly. I know what failing utterly looks like. And then one day, suddenly, you like, almost without you knowing it, you step over a line, and suddenly you're an author. And then suddenly, if you're lucky, you're a successful author. And then when you're a successful author, right, it kind of reinforces everything, because people like go out of their way. You get more publicity. People say, yeah, people put you on tables, you know, in bookshops and stuff like that. And you kind of get a rolling thing going. And then if you're sensible enough to keep your mouth shut on Twitter, you can keep it going for a nice long time.
That is such a perceptive comment. Do you find, Ben, that given the fact that, do you think there's a benefit to being successful slightly later in your career? I mean, I remember Cumberbatch said once about his acting that he was the best thing that ever happened to his acting career was that he didn't become successful till he was in his mid-30s.
Well, like acting, most writers don't become successful until their 30s.
Yeah,
very few writers become hugely successful in their 20s. Yeah, I mean, I've noticed that because I've got a lot of successful contemporaries who are like 20 years younger than me, and they're much more miserable than I am. Because they expect to be successful, because that's all they've ever had. They wrote their first book, it was successful, and they're like, oh, I wrote my first book, it was successful, and now I repeat it, and oh, I'm so miserable because I have this house in the suburbs and money and everything, and I'm sitting there going, you bastards, right? You should have been me for 20 years, right? And I'm enjoying every single freaking minute of it, because it's like it came after 20 years of the wilderness, right? So I stepped out of the wilderness into a limo, and like, yes, a limo. Fantastic. I'm not like, oh no, this limo's a bit smudged. No, it's a fucking limo. You know, it's like people pay me money for my books. I couldn't pay people to read my books 20 years ago, you know, but now it's brilliant.
That's wonderful. Guys,
so I agree with Cumberbatch, because you appreciate your success much more, because you've had a period where you weren't successful. And I'm not saying people should spend 20 years in the wilderness, because it was miserable and I'd like to have avoided it, thank you very much. But it does mean that I'm enjoying my success much more than a lot of people who've had similar success at a younger age would have had, because they just don't have anything to contrast it with. Whereas for me, every first class ticket on an aircraft is like, yes, first class. I'm in first class.
And surely that is the right way around to do it, because you don't want to lead your life in reverse. You want your life to get better, as opposed to, you know, rock into your 50s thinking, man, that stuff I did when I was 20 was awesome.
But also, yes, terrible pressure.
Yeah.
On
yes,
you to
absolutely.
perform.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Especially if it's like your first debut novel and it's like some Booker Prize winner. And the thing is, it's not very lucrative being writing for Litific unless you can activate kind of secondary things like, you know, professorships at American universities and things like that. Unless you can activate kind of like the speaking engagements, unless you activate those, literary fiction tends to be a shot in the pan. Not always, but generally speaking, you sell, you know, depending on where you came in the Booker shortlist, a certain number of books, and then that's it. You don't carry on unless you're kind of Kingsley Amis or someone. You don't carry on selling in any large quantities, and so therefore, unlike us genre, as they say, genre writers, who can expect to carry on selling our books until, you know, and pumping out our back catalogue until we're dead, basically. And that's, thank you very much. I'm still getting money for Doctor Who. I'm not making a lot of money out of Doctor Who, but every so often £120 comes from like some BBC subsidiary right sale to Saudi Arabia or something. It's like, look, I'm still making money. That was something I wrote. God, it's a long time ago, 30 years ago.
That is wonderful. We are sprinting towards the end of our session here, Ben. So what is it you've got that's released next? What's the next thing up?
I have a collection of short stories.
Yeah,
it's on ebook. We will be there will be a print on demand. This is our first foray. We just thought, right, what can we do to cheer everyone up in this short time frame, including my agent because he was miserable during COVID. We thought, well, everyone keeps asking for these short stories. They go, oh, you got to read the short stories. I haven't got all, you know. And I thought, well, look, let's put it out on an ebook, and then everyone can have access to them. And then it's like all good ideas. It got completely out of hand. So that's going to be as an ebook on the 31st. That comes out as an ebook available on the 31st, and all good, you know, formats and Mobi.
31st of July.
Yes.
Yeah,
in
fantastic.
about 3 days.
Yeah. 3 days from when we're taping this. Yeah, brilliant.
Yes. So probably out already.
Yeah, by the time everybody sees this, it will be out. Yeah.
There will be a print on demand version. Subterranean Press will be doing a limited edition release in America. You know, beautiful, overpriced stuff. I wouldn't buy them, but I think they're lovely. I mean, I love getting them because they're so.
That's the kind of stuff that we love, isn't it, Laura? You know, we love.
Oh God, yeah, the subterranean ones are just stunning. Yeah, but I've got a couple on my shelf, and it's expensive.
It's like all the paper is so expensive. Like normally my books fall apart like. The ones I'm like. So that'll be coming out, and there will be an audible version of that for people that are fans, and Cobner, the people will want to know this. Cobner will be reading the Peter Grant sections. Jackson will be reading the very short German one, and we're trying out some various new readers because we're going to need one for the Abigail novella, which is coming out next year. So we're trying out, finding a reader for that. So we're using it as a kind of experiment, and I am appearing on it. I will be reading my own introductions, unfortunately, for everyone involved. Somebody thought that was a good idea. I didn't.
Listening to your voice, mate, I think it's an excellent idea, and I think it's always great when you've got an author like yourself who can talk. And not all authors can, every author can talk, but not everybody's got a voice that you can savour. But you have, for sure, mate. I look forward to hearing that.
Yes, well, no, but I keep being upstayed by Joe Abercrombie, which I find really annoying, considering we generally share shelf space, me and Joe. I wouldn't mind if he was called Joe Zetterberg or something. And no, because it's got that. Then the comic is coming out, the Faye. And for my German fans, the German version of False Value is coming out in October, I think. I mean, it's all been thrown into a burden because of COVID, because we can't get, there was I had this whole long tour of Germany that I was really looking forward to that just got cancelled, and then in March, What Abigail Did That Summer is out, which is the next novella. I have no idea how this one, she's came out way different than I expected her to come out, so, and it's all written in London, modern London. I could do Cockney. I mean, I grew up with Cockney, but this is like, fam and bruv. And
yeah.
Oh,
I'm so super familiar with that.
There was a lot of research involved in it, a lot of banging my head on the table trying to get the voice right.
Yeah.
Boy.
Contemporary London patois is something else. It's
well, I don't know what. It's multicultural London English is what it's called.
Yep.
MLE is its actual official name.
Oh, fantastic!
And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I had to do quite a lot of research. Some of it I knew. Some of it's really old. Some of it's old freaking street argot from the 19th century, which I already knew from my research the other way. Some of it is, but it's typical London in that it's just stolen from everyone.
Yeah.
So it's stolen from Jamaican English. It's stolen from American English. It's stolen just stuff that they made up. My favourite one is Bare Tundra, right, which means cold, right? I love the logic of that.
yeah, right. Oh, that is fantastic.
Bare Tundra. That's not stolen from anywhere. That's just a piece of invention. I just love that it's getting Bare Tundra in here. Bruv. I can't do it out loud because I'm too self-conscious trying to pretend to be Ali G, so.
Oh, yeah. No, I completely agree. If I was doing an impression of my daughter, I would be speaking in this way, but I'm clearly not going to do it on camera.
My favourite version of the whole thing is those two comedians that do them as World War II Spitfire pilots, but do it with MLE, and that just cracks me up. I watched quite a lot of that because I found it while I was doing research, and I just fell off my chair, and I just watch all their sketches now. So
it is indeed marvelous. And so Ben, what we're going to be doing is it's a Forbidden Planet 42 celebration, which we're doing now. Given the the ongoing COVID pandemic of it all, that is going to give birth to
the ongoing.
And the fact you're an unventilated basement with a suspicious smell at the best of times.
You are hitting the nail on the head with our giant size. What is it? Chilling machines in the basement as well during the summer. There's something else, I can't even remember. It's temporary, left my mind what those things are called.
Air conditioning units.
Yes, exactly. AC units. Thank you. You think I would have been able to remember that. Anyway, so we're going to be FP42 is going to be birthing Forbidden Planet TV, and this is going to become a regular online broadcast channel for us. So we'd love for you to come back. When you're releasing stuff and chat to us again, we could do a whole hour about MLE.
I'd rather do this than write shit any day. No, seriously. No, they go, can you write 200 words on your latest book? No, can I just talk to someone? This is so much easier.
Well, mate, we will take you up on that. Thank you so much. And thanks so much for spending this hour with us. It's been fantastic. It's been really good.
I've enjoyed it. Especially now that I got my background right. This has been an experiment for future meetings on COVID. So COVID meetings.
It totally works. So thank you very much. You've been watching Forbidden Planet 42 with the mighty Laura Dodd from the FP Book Department and the spectacular, wonderfully entertaining Ben Aaronovitch. Thanks so much for spending the last hour with us, mate. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you. And I look forward to Forbidden Planet Television.
Right on.
Yeah.
We'll see you there. Thank you very much. Thank you, mate.